Hi everybody, Matt here from Matt Likes Comics. I was going through my comics one day, like reading them the way I do. I had bought this book recently and, working on the pile of books that I've read recently to get to the point so that they get down and I can get the filing. I got a lot of filing done, by the way. But this was the book that I referred to. This is Superman 232, which was a reprint book. All the stories in here are reprinted from either Superman, Action Comics, or Superboy, back from the 60s or the 50s in one case. This made me kind of inspired by this, considering that, all these anomalies that happened in Superman's life. The Silver Age was full of some weird and interesting stuff for Superman. Whether you consider them a trope or whether you consider them crazy or whatever, the fact is Silver Age Superman had some very interesting moments, which, because of the relative unpopularity of the Silver Age books at this time, people are not buying them and they are not getting known as well. So what I have done is I've got this pile of about 18 books that have covers that all show some of the weird stuff that happened in the Silver Age. Some of them are tropey, some of them are the same, some of them are whatever. But I pulled them out because I wanted to show some of the weirdness about Silver Age Superman. This, of course, does not even begin. This doesn't even begin to cover the whole experience of all this stuff. But we're going to cover things. Some of them are, it's just comics. Some of them are, well, you know what? I don't want to say lazy writing, but more like some of the same things over and over again. You got the, kind of like the way I talk, right? Over again, blah, blah, blah. So let us go. I'm just going to go in order of what's in the pile. I'm going to grab a book and I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to say individually what I think were the tropes. This is Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane 79, which became a hilarious trope many times, where Lois will marry another person and just to make Superman jealous. And Superman either does become jealous and keeps it hidden, or acts like the dick move he's doing here, where it's like, yeah, you laid your bed, go live in it. Here, Lois is trying to convince Superman to speak up and not forever hold his peace. And she's saying, no, you got him. You go marry him. Invariably, Lois ends up annulling all the marriages, or in one case, she became a widow. And I don't think I think she's even beat Liz Taylor on the amount of weddings that she's had over the years. But that is one thing. And the fact that, she will go to that extent to try and make Superman jealous shows the not thinking through. And the fact that it keeps happening, they do it a lot in this series, that it just becomes a trope. This is Action Comics 289. Superman is making out with a woman on the cover who looks almost exactly like his cousin grown up. This is the infamous, I can't marry you because you're my cousin. Never mind that she's 15 in the story series. Well, the story is in here. And as you can see, Superman is, he acts quick. But, it just, the fact that in the book he was like saying, I'd marry you if I could, but I can't, so I won't. And Supergirl decides, oh, I'll find you someone that looks exactly like me, but older. It just has a creepy vibe to it that makes this one of the weirdest Silver Age stories ever made. But I recommend you read it. Next up is Jimmy Olsen 115, which I've had signed by Neil Adams, I want to point out, which shows Superman and the way he treated his friends during the Silver Age in such a wonderful way. Here he's holding a jug of water, and both Aquaman, who needs water once an hour to stay surviving, and Jimmy, who is dying of thirst because he's a human being, are both asking for the water, and he's in there, ground rules only one allows one of you to survive. Give us some water. Stop the test. But as usual, in this one, he's being a crazy bad guy. So that's that. Another thing that was hilarious about stories from the late 50s to 1970 or so was the fact that it seemed that everybody on Earth was able to go back in time and space and somehow be on Krypton. And of course, everybody knew Kryptonese. Everybody was able to go. And every one of the titles at some point had somebody go to Krypton at one point. This is Jimmy Olsen 101, where Jimmy went to Krypton. And of course, every one of them knows the Krypton's going to explode, right? Every one of them goes to Jor-El and say, I know that it's going to happen. How can I help you? And of course, history being unable to be changed, Krypton blows up. Now, this is kind of funny because here is Jimmy Olsen holding up a toddler, Kal-El, where in one of the stories in the book that inspired me to do this was a reprint of one where Superboy saved baby Jimmy. Because comics. Here is Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, 73. Another one of those showing what a wonderful, loving relationship the two have. Where she has made a puppet of Superman and she's whipping him with cat o' nine tails. And it's called The Dummy and the Damsel is the name of the story. This one, again, just shows how silly some of this Silver Age goodness can be. And the way she's whipping him, it looks like she's enjoying it. And this isn't the fun kind of whipping, as they would say. This is the, I am so mad at you, I could just hit you over and over again. Now we're back to another Lois Lane, and back to, I'm going to Krypton. Because here's Lois Lane deciding that she is going to go after and marry Jor-El. Not realizing that they're trying to make Superman closer to her, but it takes her a while to realize, if I marry Jor-El, then Kal-El becomes my son. And eventually she leaves and goes back to Earth. It's just this weird, again, one of those weird concepts that they seem to take a little too far before they then, hey, what am I doing? And stopping it. Although the Kurt Schaffenberger cover here is very cool. Next, I had to include this because it's one of my favorite stories. This is Lois Lane number 54, the first appearance of Herco. And this was another thing where they would have an alien or an interdimensional creature that would come and either fall in love with Superman or Jimmy Olsen or Lois Lane, and then that person would have to deal with them. And it seemed to happen a lot. I mean, Herco's second appearance, Lois and Jimmy go to the Herco dimension, and a female Herco, or Herca, I guess you'd say, ends up falling for Jimmy. It's just the same story over again. So, Herco is great. James Gunn, if you watch this, please bring Herco into one of the movies. We want to see Herco. Next up is Superboy 134, which has yet another story element that was done in the Superman series a lot. And this is where Superman goes bad. In this case, Superboy going bad and wrecking classrooms. Whether it's red kryptonite or magic or just something he's doing to cover up something else, this happens quite frequently. This one is called The Scoundrel of Steel, where, Superboy or Superman has to act evil, or red kryptonite has made them evil, and, everybody hates them, and by the end of the story, everybody, oh, this is why, and they love him again. So, another one they did to death. And speaking of red kryptonite, this here is called Action Comics 303, where red kryptonite has turned Superman into this snake creature, and Supergirl, and the military try to get it because they don't realize it's Superman. So yet another red kryptonite story, which there were a lot of at this time. Whenever it almost seems like, I don't know what to do. Oh, let's give him a red kryptonite again. Well, what are we going to do this time? Oh, he's going to shrink. Okay, and such forth and such forth. A cool story, though, considering the wackiness of the plot. It is this one is a really good one. This one actually shows they thought it through. And we're back to the ridiculous how anybody can get to Krypton. Here is here is Action Comics 281, where a scientist manages to go to Krypton. But the scientist that goes to Krypton at that time went a little earlier than Superman because I believe he died in this issue. Superman was trying to, and he told him all about the Krypton trip, and Superman remembers him and all this stuff. But now it's an Earth scientist that got to Krypton, and in this case, he saved Kal-El's life after Kal-El was bitten by a poisonous snake on Krypton. So there we go. Action Comics 281. I remember reading this story for the first time in a 80-page giant. One of them, and strangely enough, I don't have that particular one yet. Next up, Superman 203, another one where some part of Superman's costume or something, like where there's one where Superman's left hand becomes vulnerable, what I call the weird ones. In this case, Superman's costume is killing his coworkers. For some reason, radiation is coming off them. I think it's just wacky, but it's the kind of plots from the Silver Age, of course. Next up is a good one. This is Superman 147, featuring the Legion of Supervillains. I like this because it's a very early Legion of Superheroes appearance, but this is Lex Luthor trying again to get after Superman. Now, here's two of the tropes that I find hilarious about this. One, I have a whole bunch of stories about this, but one, what in the name would these three gain by coming back in time to kill Superman when history shows that they don't kill him? Again, history can't be changed. And secondly, isn't it a violation of their civil rights that they commit a crime in 1960 and they get punished for it in 2960? Isn't that a little long? But I digress. This was their first appearance, by the way, of Saturn Queen, Lightning Lord, and Cosmic King, who, of course, were copies of the main three Legionnaires at the time. There were a couple other Legionnaires kicking around at this point, but basically the Legion was the original three. And here's another thing about Krypton coming up in 142. It is amazing how many pieces of Krypton survived. Here we have a flame dragon that survived for all this time from an egg. And it hatched and grew fast under the yellow sun and all this stuff. And of course, being from Krypton, it will affect Superman. But again, we have it's not just this. It's, oh my God, the Phantom Zone projector stayed. The statues of my ancestors stayed. That was one of the stories in that Superman book that made me want, that inspired this. All the pieces of kryptonite that stuck around. People who were off planet, or people who managed to survive doing other things, like Dev-Em, for example. This was done over and over again during the Silver Age. And another one. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, 55, where his friends either get superpowers or Superman loses his superpowers, and, wacky hijinks end up. In this one, Jimmy gets super strength and he manages to knock Superman down at some point. I don't know if it's really super strength. I don't remember off the top of my head. But something happens and Jimmy's actually able to knock out Superman in a boxing match. So make with it what you will. I don't know how many times Lana Lang, Lois Lane, Perry White, and Jimmy Olsen got superpowers, and even Batman in one story. Next up, we have Adventure Comics 282, which is Lana Lang and the Legion of Superheroes, which shows the length that some of the girls will go to try and get Superboy or Superman to fall in love with them, or the schemes that Superboy will do in order to get around it. And this is so cool. He actually makes it actually gets to the point where he makes Lana Lang eat her own oatmeal from what she was trying to do, and it ended up being cool. But this is, again, an example of another one of those where everybody's being a dick to each other, and it's not a very good relationship. And this is, of course, the first appearance of Starboy in the Legion of Superheroes. I've got 3 books left, and one, I'm sure everybody's not surprised, because even though this one wasn't a complete trope, this one has the Superman is a dick trope. And this is Action Comics 252. Oh my god, I have a cousin. Now I'm going to dump you off so I don't have to deal with you. This is basically what happens in this book. You'd think he would be happy as hell to have a cousin, and at the very least, somebody who he could trust, place her with that. For example, maybe a Bruce Wayne. Bruce is already looking after Robin. He has some experience. Bruce Wayne has resources. He could make her feel better. He could teach her. He could do all these things. No, he dumps her off in an orphanage because that was good enough for him. And she's 15, so it's not like and he tells her, you can't be adopted because, I'm going to take my sweet damn time about teaching you, and you will be allowed to be out in public when I tell you to. Right off the bat, he starts acting like the dick big brother and not happy that he had his cousin after all. Can you feel the burning off that one? The last two, well, they're a bit of a combination of stuff. This one here, Superman 165. This is another one where Superman does something so that he can, he pretends to be away so that he can get things done so that, criminals will be foiled. And it's another one where Superman goes off to the future and asks for somebody from the Legion of the Superheroes to give him a hand. In this case, it was Saturn Girl who dressed up as Sears. Which is all good and stuff. But again, history would show, that he did that. So it almost feels like he had no choice but to get Sears because, it had to say, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it always brings me to an interesting conundrum when it comes to the Legion. Lots of people have said that the Legion of Superheroes stories are not chronological. And I would agree with that. We see the stories from Superboy's point of view. They come in order as Superboy dealt with them. They aren't necessarily in order of what things happen. Because Supergirl joined the Legion before Superboy. And they knew that Superboy was going to end up joining because Supergirl knew because Superman had told her he had joined the Legion of Superheroes. So it feels like, again, that time thing that goes in. And the reason I know Supergirl came first, Brainiac 5 was in that crowd scene during the first issue of Legion. The Legion wasn't only 3 members at the time. They were the 3 original members, but the Legion at the time actually had 11 members. Superboy was the 12th to join. Supergirl joined with Brainiac 5. So if Brainiac 5 was in the Legion when Superboy came to join the Legion, then Supergirl was already a member. So she's a member longer than Superboy. And as I said, you're seeing them as Superboy sees them because of the way time goes. You don't see that in the adventure stories because I don't think people thought of that as much, but it starts picking up in the 70s and 80s stories where we have stories without Superboy, and then when Superboy comes in, we're seeing what was. Let's talk about a past story, but for Superboy it was new, right? So it's all over the place, but still fun. You have to suspend belief because comics. And the last one I'm going to show is another trope that they did in all those books all the time, especially in the early 60s. Not as much in the late 60s, late 50s, early 60s. And that was body transformation. This is Superboy 127. And here we've got Lana, who has the ring to be an insect queen. But this other guy became a bee. Half bee, half human. And body transformation happened a lot. You had Elastic Lad, you had Jimmy with the Turtle Man, the Wolf Man, the Porcupine guy, and Lois would transform. There's one where Superboy was a gorilla. The transformation covers happened a lot in the Silver Age, and that is the last of the so-called tropes for the Silver Age Superman that I wanted to get to. I could cover a ton more because probably half the books that came out in the Silver Age from the Super family, outside of Adventure Comics, once it became the Legion, because that became an actual serious book. Um, Outside of the Legion stories, the rest of them were just wacky as heck, and they were all over the place. And enough tropes happened that, like the red kryptonite, the Superman treats his friends badly, Lois and him are in dysfunctional relationship, Lana is still going after it, Lana and Superboy are in dysfunctional relationships, etc., continued on, and it made for some interesting stories in the Silver Age. And I think more people should read that stuff, because then there are some examples of what comics shouldn't be, but overall, it's still a lot of fun because it's just out there stories. It's a 10-page story of silliness, rowdiness, and fun. If you like this video, I know I went a little long today, but if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe below. In particular, tell me if you liked any of these books. If you have any of these books, if there's ones I didn't show that you think would amount to something really cool to see, or if you just want to share your thoughts on the weather today. It doesn't matter. Thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. My name is Matt. I like comics, and I hope you do too. Bye, everybody.